On the morning of December 17, 1944, Technical Sergeant David Cole crouched behind a snow-covered stone wall 3 miles east of Malmedy, Belgium, holding a Graflex Speed Graphic camera that would be destroyed by German soldiers exactly 14 hours later. The camera weighed 4 pounds 12 ounces. It used 4 by 5-inch sheet film. It could capture images with a level of detail that would terrify the German High Command when they realized what Cole had photographed: an entire American armored column stretching back 7 miles containing 127 Sherman tanks, 64 half-tracks, and 89 supply trucks moving toward the German lines. During the opening hours of what would become known as the Battle of the Bulge, Cole was 23 years old, former newspaper photographer from Des Moines, Iowa, assigned to the 166th Signal Photo Company, 0 combat experience before D-Day, and he had just taken 11 photographs that would never reach American intelligence because a Waffen SS officer would personally smash his. Camera against a tree trunk at 23:43 hours that same night. But before that happened, those photographs would pass through the hands of 3 captured American soldiers, 1 Belgian resistance fighter, and eventually into a German intelligence briefcase, where an Oberst would study them for 40 minutes before ordering every copy destroyed, and every person who had seen them interrogated about what else they had witnessed. The Battle of the Bulge began at 05:30 hours on December 16, 1944. When German artillery opened fire along an 80-mile front in the Ardennes forest. Cole's unit had been stationed near Malmedy photographing road conditions and troop movements for engineering assessments. The assignment was supposed to be routine. The Ardennes was considered a quiet sector. Allied intelligence believed the Germans were finished, incapable of mounting any significant offensive. The plan was for Cole and his partner, Corporal James Bennett, to spend 3 days documenting infrastructure damage and road capacity in preparation for the final push into Germany. They had brought 200 sheets of film, 2 Graflex cameras, a jeep, and enough coffee and cigarettes to trade for information from local civilians. On the morning of December 16th, they woke to the sound of distant thunder that wasn't thunder. German artillery was hitting American positions 12 miles east. By 0800 hours, refugees were streaming west through Malmedy. Belgian civilians with carts and livestock and whatever possessions they could carry. They brought reports of German tanks, hundreds of them, breaking through American lines. Cole and Bennett were ordered to move east, find the American units that were supposed to be holding the line, and document whatever they found. The Signal Corps wanted photographs of defensive positions, of troops in action, of anything that could help headquarters understand what was happening. Cole loaded his Graflex with fresh film and climbed into the jeep. Bennett drove. They headed east on the road toward Biegenbach. At 0947 hours, they encountered the 1st American units retreating west. Infantry from the 99th Division, moving fast, some of them wounded, most of them exhausted. Cole stopped the jeep and asked an officer what had happened. The officer said the Germans had hit them with everything: tanks and infantry and artillery. More than anyone had expected, the line had collapsed in 3 places, and they were falling back to establish a new defensive position. Cole asked if he could photograph the retreat. The officer said, "Photograph whatever you want, but do it fast," because the Germans were maybe an hour behind them. Cole spent 20 minutes taking photographs of American soldiers moving west. Exhausted faces, 1,000-yard stares, men who had been fighting since dawn. He used 8 sheets of film. Then he and Bennett continued east. The road was empty for the next 4 miles. No civilians, no military traffic. Just snow and trees and the distant sound of artillery. At 11:03 hours they crested a hill and saw the column. It stretched back as far as Cole could see. Tanks and half-tracks and trucks, all stopped, not moving, just sitting on the road in a long line. Cole counted 40 Sherman tanks in the first section alone before he stopped counting. Bennett pulled the jeep off the road and Cole grabbed his camera. This was exactly what the Signal Corps wanted: visual documentation of American armored strength moving to meet the German offensive. Cole moved along the column taking photographs. He shot the tanks from multiple angles. He shot the crews standing beside their vehicles. He shot the supply trucks and the half-tracks and the command vehicles. He used 11 sheets of film in 35 minutes. The photographs showed everything: unit markings on the tanks, tactical numbers painted on the turrets, the faces of the crews, the equipment loaded on the vehicles, and most importantly, the sheer number of vehicles stretching back along the road. Cole didn't know it at the time, but he had just created a complete photographic intelligence report on American armored strength in that sector. Tank types, unit identification, approximate numbers, exact location. Everything a German intelligence officer would need to assess American capabilities. At 11:52 hours, German artillery started hitting the road 2 miles behind the column. Cole and Bennett could see the explosions, black smoke rising above the trees. The American column started moving again, but slowly, one vehicle at a time. The road was narrow. The tanks couldn't maneuver around each other. They were stuck in a single file. Cole took 3 more photographs of the column beginning to move. Then he and Bennett returned to their Jeep. Bennett wanted to head back west, back toward Malmedy, where there were American troops and defensive positions. But Cole wanted to move forward, to get closer to the fighting, to document the actual engagement when these tanks met the German forces. They argued for 3 minutes. Bennett said they were photographers, not infantrymen. Their job was to document and report, not get killed. Cole said the best photographs always came from being closest to the action. Bennett finally agreed to move forward 1 more mile. Just 1 mile. Then they would turn around. They drove east. The road curved through dense forest. Snow was falling harder now. Visibility was maybe 200 yards. At 12:14 hours, they rounded a curve and saw the roadblock. German soldiers, at least 20 of them. They had blocked the road with a destroyed American half-track, and they were setting up a machine gun position. Bennett hit the brakes. The Jeep slid on the snow and ice. The Germans saw them. Someone shouted. Cole heard the bolt of a rifle being worked. Bennett threw the Jeep into reverse, but the rear wheels just spun on the ice. They weren't going anywhere. Cole grabbed his camera, not to photograph, just to hold it, like it might somehow protect him. 3 German soldiers ran toward the Jeep with rifles raised. One of them was shouting in German. Cole didn't speak German. He raised his hands. Bennett raised his hands. The German soldiers surrounded the Jeep. One of them pulled Cole out and threw him to the ground. Another grabbed Bennett. They searched both Americans, took their weapons, took their identification, took Cole's camera. A German Obergefreiter examined the Graflex. He opened the back and pulled out the film holder. 4 sheets of exposed film. He held them up to the light. Sheet film was already exposed, already containing latent images, but you couldn't see anything without developing it. The Obergefreiter didn't know what the film showed. He just knew it was exposed. He put the film holder in his pocket and kept the camera. Cole and Bennett were searched again. The Germans found Bennett's sidearm that he had hidden in his boot. The Obergefreiter hit Bennett in the face with the pistol grip. Bennett went down, blood in the snow. Cole started to move toward Bennett, but another German soldier put a rifle barrel against Cole's chest. Don't move. Cole didn't move. The Germans took Cole and Bennett to a farmhouse 200 yards from the road. Inside were 6 more captured American soldiers, 2 from the 99th Division, 4 from an engineering unit. They had been captured that morning during the initial German assault. The farmhouse had been converted into a temporary holding area. 2 German guards inside. 3 more outside. The prisoners sat on the floor with their hands on their heads. Cole and Bennett were pushed inside and told to sit. A German Unteroffizier asked them questions in broken English. What unit? What mission? Where were American forces? How many tanks? Cole said they were photographers, Signal Corps just documenting road conditions. The Unteroffizier didn't believe him. He asked about the camera. What had Cole photographed? Cole said nothing important, just roads and refugees. The Unteroffizier slapped Cole across the face. Try again. What did you photograph? Cole repeated the same answer. Just roads. Just refugees. The Unteroffizier studied Cole for a long moment, then walked away. The prisoners sat in silence. Outside they could hear vehicles moving. German vehicles, half-tracks and trucks. At 1340 hours, a German officer entered the farmhouse. Oberleutnant. He spoke better English than the Unteroffizier. He asked the same questions. What unit? What mission? What had been photographed? Cole gave the same answers. The Oberleutnant seemed less interested in the answers than in Cole's camera. He examined the Graflex carefully. He asked about the film. How many photographs had Cole taken? Cole said maybe 4 or 5. Just testing the camera. The Oberleutnant asked what Cole had photographed. Cole said trees and snow. The Oberleutnant smiled. He said German intelligence would develop the film and see exactly what Cole had photographed. If Cole was lying, things would become very unpleasant. Then the Oberleutnant left, taking the camera and the film holder with him. The prisoners remained in the farmhouse for the next 7 hours. The German guards gave them no food and no water. At 1820 hours, the guards received new orders. The prisoners were being moved east, deeper behind German lines, to a collection point where they would be processed and eventually sent to a POW camp. The 8 American soldiers were marched out of the farmhouse and loaded into a truck, German Opel Blitz. Canvas cover over the back. 2 guards with Kar 98K rifles. The truck drove east through the snow. Inside the truck, Cole tried to figure out what would happen when the Germans developed his film. The photographs showed American tanks. Lots of them. The Germans would know exactly where that armor column was located, exactly how many vehicles, exactly what units. That information was valuable. It would help German commanders plan their attacks, identify weak points, concentrate their forces. Cole had essentially handed German intelligence a detailed report on American strength in that sector, and he had done it with 11 photographs taken in 35 minutes. The truck stopped at 1903 hours. The prisoners were unloaded at a village that Cole didn't recognize. More captured Americans here. Maybe 40 of them. They were being held in a church. German guards everywhere. An Oberst was conducting interrogations in the church sacristy. Cole and the other new arrivals were processed. Names recorded. Units identified. Then they were put into the church with the other prisoners. Cole sat on a pew and tried to think. Bennett was next to him. Bennett's face was swollen from where he had been hit with the pistol. He asked Cole what they should do. Cole said there was nothing they could do. They were prisoners now. They would be sent to a camp. Maybe they would survive the war. Maybe they wouldn't. At 21:20 hours, a German soldier entered the church and called Cole's name. Cole stood. The soldier motioned for him to follow. Bennett grabbed Cole's arm. "Where are they taking you?" Cole said he didn't know. The soldier led Cole to the sacristy where the Oberst was waiting. The Oberst was older, maybe 50, with Iron Cross First Class on his uniform. On the table in front of him were Cole's photographs, all 11 of them, fully developed, printed on German photo paper. The Oberst gestured for Cole to sit. Cole sat. The Oberst pushed the photographs across the table. He spoke perfect English with almost no accent. He said Cole had taken some very interesting pictures. Cole looked at the photographs. They were sharp, clear, every detail visible, tank numbers, unit markings, crew faces. The entire column documented in perfect detail. The Oberst asked Cole to explain what he had been photographing. Cole said he was a Signal Corps photographer documenting road conditions. The Oberst smiled. He said these photographs showed much more than road conditions. They showed American armored strength, unit composition, equipment status, location. This was intelligence, valuable intelligence. The Oberst asked if Cole understood what he had documented. Cole said he was just following orders to photograph military movements. The Oberst said the photographs showed 127 tanks, 64 half-tracks, and 89 support vehicles from at least 4 different armored units, all concentrated in a single column on a single road. The Oberst said German forces in that sector had maybe 40 tanks total. The photographs showed the Americans had more than 3 times that number in just one column. The Oberst asked if there were more American armor in the area. Cole said he didn't know. He was just a photographer. The Oberst studied Cole for a long moment. Then he asked the question that Cole would remember for the rest of his life. The Oberst asked if Cole understood that these photographs could not be allowed to exist. Cole didn't understand. The Oberst explained. The photographs showed the true scale of American armored superiority in this sector. They showed that German forces were massively outnumbered. If these photographs were seen by German soldiers, if they were circulated among the troops, it would destroy morale. German soldiers needed to believe they were fighting against equal or inferior numbers. They needed to believe victory was possible. These photographs proved victory was not possible. They proved the Americans had overwhelming material superiority. The Oberst said the photographs would be destroyed. All copies, the negatives, everything. And anyone who had seen them would need to be questioned about what else they had observed. The Oberst called for a guard. The guard brought in the film holder from Cole's camera. The Oberst removed the 4 remaining sheets of unexposed film and held them up. He asked if there were any other photographs. Cole said no, just the 11 that had been developed. The Oberst opened a drawer and removed Cole's camera. The Graflex Speed Graphic. He examined it carefully. He asked how much it cost. Cole said about $75. The Oberst said it was an excellent camera. German photographers used similar equipment. Then he stood, walked to the sacristy window, opened it, and threw the camera outside. Cole heard it hit something. Wood. Or stone. The sound of breaking glass. The lens. The Oberst closed the window and returned to the table. He said the camera could not be allowed to survive either. Physical evidence of what Cole had documented. The Oberst gathered the 11 photographs and put them in a folder. He told the guard to take Cole back to the church. As Cole was leaving, the Oberst said one more thing. He said Cole should consider himself fortunate. Some of his colleagues had wanted Cole shot as a spy. Photographing military installations was grounds for execution under the Geneva Convention. But the Oberst had argued that Cole was just a photographer following orders, not an intelligence operative. Cole was being treated as a prisoner of war, not as a spy. Cole should remember that mercy and not cause any problems. Cole was taken back to the church. Bennett asked what had happened. Cole told him about the photographs, about the Oberst's explanation, about the camera being destroyed. Bennett asked if they were in danger. Cole said he didn't think so. They were POWs now. They would be processed like all the other captured Americans. But the photographs were gone. Destroyed. And the camera was destroyed. And Cole's documentation of American armored superiority in that sector would never reach American intelligence. The prisoners remained in the church until December 19th. On that morning, German guards loaded them into trucks and moved them further east. The convoy was strafed by American P-47s at 11:45 hours. 2 trucks were destroyed. 11 American prisoners were killed by American bombs. Cole and Bennett survived. They were moved to a temporary POW camp near Gerolstein, Germany. The camp held maybe 300 American prisoners. conditions were terrible. No heat, limited food, no medical care. Men were dying from wounds and disease. Cole and Bennett stayed together. They shared whatever food they could scavenge. They tried to keep each other warm during the freezing December nights. On December 23rd, the camp was hit by Allied artillery. The shells fell randomly. 3 prisoners were killed. Cole was knocked unconscious by a near miss. He woke up in the camp infirmary with Bennett standing over him. Bennett said Cole had been out for 6 hours. The camp was being evacuated. The Germans were moving prisoners west, away from the advancing Allied forces. On December 24th, Cole and Bennett were loaded into another truck. This convoy moved west through the snow. American fighter bombers were everywhere. The convoy stopped frequently to avoid air attacks. On December 26th, they reached a larger POW camp near Koblenz. This camp held over 2,000 American prisoners. Conditions were slightly better. There was food, though not much. There was shelter from the weather. Cole and Bennett were assigned to a barracks with 80 other men. They would remain here for the next 2 months. During those 2 months, Cole thought constantly about the photographs he had taken. He thought about what the Oberst had said, that the photographs could not be allowed to exist because they showed the true scale of American material superiority. Cole had spent his entire adult life as a photographer. He believed in the power of images to document reality, to tell truth, to show what was actually happening. But the Oberst had shown him something else, that images could be too truthful, that some realities were too dangerous to document, that photographs could be weapons, not just tools of information. Cole had taken 11 photographs that showed the Americans had overwhelming numerical superiority in tanks and armored vehicles. Those photographs would have helped American intelligence understand their own strength. They would have boosted American morale. But they would have destroyed German morale. So they were destroyed. The images were erased. The camera was smashed. And Cole was warned never to speak about what he had documented. On February 12, 1945, Allied forces reached the POW camp near Koblenz. The Germans had evacuated 3 days earlier. The camp was liberated by units from the 9th Armored Division. Cole and Bennett and the other survivors were processed, given medical attention, and evacuated west. Cole was flown to England on February 15th. He spent 2 weeks at a hospital near Southampton, recovering from malnutrition and frostbite. On March 1st, he was returned to duty. The Signal Corps wanted him back in the field, but Cole requested a transfer to rear echelon duties. He said he was done with combat photography. The Signal Corps approved his request. Cole spent the rest of the war working at a photo laboratory in Paris, developing and printing other photographers' images. He never picked up a camera in the field again. After the war, Cole returned to Iowa. He tried to resume his career as a newspaper photographer. But something had changed. He couldn't look at photographs the same way anymore. Every image he saw, he thought about what wasn't being shown, what had been edited out, what had been deemed too dangerous to document. He thought about his 11 photographs that had been destroyed because they showed too much truth. In 1947, Cole quit photography entirely. He took a job as a high school teacher in Des Moines. He taught history and civics. He never told his students about his experience during the war. He never mentioned the photographs or the Oberst or the destroyed camera. In 1953, Cole received a letter from the Department of the Army. They were researching Signal Corps activities during the Battle of the Bulge. They had found references in captured German documents to American photographs showing tank concentrations near Malmedy in December 1944. The documents indicated the photographs had been destroyed on orders from German High Command. The Army wanted to know if Cole had any information about these photographs. Cole wrote back and told them everything about the column of 127 tanks, about the 11 photographs he had taken, about the Oberst who had explained why the photographs had to be destroyed, about the camera being thrown out the window. The Army thanked him for the information and said it would be included in the official history of the battle. But they also said the photographs themselves were lost. No copies had survived. The German intelligence files had been destroyed in the final weeks of the war. Cole's documentation of American armored superiority in that sector existed only in his memory and in the fragmentary references in German documents. In 1967, Cole was contacted by a military historian researching the Battle of the Bulge. The historian had found more detailed references to Cole's photographs in recently declassified German intelligence reports. The reports indicated that German commanders had been shocked by the scale of American armored strength shown in the photographs. One report specifically stated that the photographs showed American tank forces outnumbered German forces in that sector by more than 40-1 when all armored vehicles were counted. The report said this information was considered so damaging to German morale that not only were the photographs destroyed, but the German intelligence officers who had seen them were ordered to minimize their reports about American strength in all subsequent briefings to frontline commanders. The historian asked Cole if he would be willing to be interviewed about his experience. Cole agreed. The interview was conducted in 1968 and later published in a military history journal. In the interview, Cole described in detail the photographs he had taken, the German interrogation, and the Oberst's explanation for why the images had to be destroyed. Cole said the experience had taught him that photography was never neutral. Every image made choices about what to show and what to hide. Every photograph was propaganda for someone, whether intentionally or not. His 11 photographs had been propaganda for American material superiority. They had shown a truth that was dangerous to the enemy. So they were destroyed. Cole said he understood the Oberst's logic. In war, morale was as important as weapons. Soldiers needed to believe they had a chance of winning. Photographs that proved they had no chance were weapons that could destroy an army from within. The historian asked Cole if he regretted taking the photographs. Cole said no. He had been doing his job, documenting what he saw, recording reality. He said he regretted that the photographs were lost, not because of their intelligence value, but because they were historical evidence. They showed something true about that moment in the war. And now that truth existed only in memory and in fragmentary descriptions in old German intelligence reports. Cole died in 1989 at age 68. His obituary in the Des Moines Register mentioned his service during World War II but said nothing about the photographs or the destroyed camera. After his death, his family donated his papers to the State Historical Society of Iowa. Among those papers was a handwritten account of his capture and interrogation in December 1944. In that account, Cole wrote something he had never said in any interview. He wrote that on the night of December 17, 1944, after the Oberst had thrown his camera out the window, Cole had been taken back to the church where the other prisoners were being held. Around 23:30 hours, Cole had asked a guard if he could use the latrine. The guard had escorted him outside. The latrine was behind the church. On the way there, Cole had passed the sacristy window, and on the ground below the window, he had seen his camera, the Graflex Speed Graphic. The body was shattered. The lens was broken. The back was torn open. But the camera was there. Cole had looked at it for maybe 5 seconds. The guard had told him to keep moving. Cole had kept moving. But in those 5 seconds, he had memorized exactly where the camera lay, and he had thought about trying to retrieve it. Maybe on the way back from the latrine, maybe during the night if he could slip away. But he had done nothing. He had been too afraid, and the next morning, the prisoners had been loaded into trucks and moved east, and Cole had never seen his camera again. In his handwritten account, Cole wrote that he had thought about that moment for the rest of his life. Those 5 seconds when he had seen his destroyed camera lying in the snow. And he had done nothing. He wrote that he didn't know if the camera could have been recovered. Probably not. The guards were everywhere. Any attempt to retrieve it would have been seen. He would have been shot. But still, he had seen it. His camera, his tool, his weapon, lying broken in the snow, and he had walked past it and left it there. Cole wrote that this was the moment he had really lost the camera. Not when the Oberst threw it out the window, but when Cole himself had chosen not to try to retrieve it, when he had chosen survival over the tool of his profession. Cole wrote that he understood this choice. It was the right choice, the only choice. But it was still a loss, and that loss had defined the rest of his relationship with photography. He had never been able to look at a camera the same way after the war, because he knew that cameras could be destroyed, that images could be erased, that documentation could be deemed too dangerous to exist, and that sometimes survival meant walking away from the tools that defined who you were. In 2003, a German researcher discovered additional documents related to Cole's photographs in the Bundesarchiv in Berlin. These documents were internal German intelligence reports from December 1944. One report, dated December 18, 1944, described the photographs in detail. The report stated that the photographs showed elements of the 3rd Armored Division, the 7th Armored Division, and at least 2 independent tank battalions, all concentrated in a single area near Malmedy. The report noted that this concentration represented approximately 40% of American armored strength in the northern sector of the Ardennes front. The report calculated that German forces in the same sector had 43 operational tanks compared to the American force of 127 tanks shown in the photographs. The report concluded that if these ratios were consistent across the entire front, German armored forces were outnumbered by nearly 3-to-1, and when including all armored vehicles such as half-tracks and tank destroyers, the ratio increased to more than 40-to-1 in the Americans' favor. The report recommended that this information be classified at the highest level and not be shared with field commanders or frontline troops. The report stated that knowledge of such overwhelming American material superiority would severely damage German morale and fighting effectiveness. A second document, dated December 21, 1944, was an order from German High Command. The order stated that all copies of the American photographs were to be destroyed immediately. Any personnel who had seen the photographs were to be debriefed and ordered not to discuss the images or their content. The order specifically mentioned Cole's camera and stated that it had been rendered inoperative to prevent any possibility of additional photographs being taken. The order concluded by stating that photographic evidence of American material superiority was to be treated as enemy propaganda and was not to be disseminated under any circumstances. These documents confirmed everything Cole had said in his 1968 interview. The photographs had shown American armored strength. The Germans had been shocked by the numbers, and the decision had been made at the highest level to destroy all evidence of what the photographs revealed. The German researcher who discovered these documents contacted the U.S. Army Center of Military History in 2004. The center added the information to their official records of the Battle of the Bulge. A notation was made in the file for the 166th Signal Photo Company regarding Technical Sergeant David Cole and the destruction of his photographs and camera by German forces in December 1944. The notation stated that Cole's photographs, though destroyed, had been documented in German intelligence reports, and that those reports confirmed the photographs showed significant American armored strength near Malmedy during the opening days of the German offensive. The notation concluded by stating that the destruction of Cole's photographs represented a loss of valuable historical documentation, but that the German reports about the photographs provided secondary evidence of American force strength in that sector during that period. In 2007, The National World War II Museum in New Orleans created an exhibit about Signal Corps photographers during the war. The exhibit included a section about photographs that had been lost or destroyed during combat operations. Cole's story was included. The exhibit displayed a photograph of a Graflex Speed Graphic camera identical to the one Cole had used, along with copies of the German intelligence reports that described Cole's photographs. The exhibit text explained that combat photographers not only documented the war, they sometimes became targets themselves because their images contained valuable intelligence. The exhibit noted that Cole's experience was not unique. Dozens of Signal Corps photographers had their cameras destroyed or confiscated by enemy forces during the war. But Cole's case was unusual because of the detailed German documentation explaining why his photographs had to be destroyed. The German reports showed that the photographs were not destroyed simply to prevent intelligence from reaching American commanders. They were destroyed to prevent German soldiers from learning the truth about how badly outnumbered they were. In 2015, a private collector in Germany discovered what he believed might be one of Cole's photographs. The image showed American Sherman tanks on a snowy road in a forest. The photograph was printed on German photo paper from the 1940s. On the back of the photograph was a handwritten notation in German that translated to American armor concentration, Malmedy sector, December 1944, source restricted. The collector contacted the U.S. Army Center of Military History. The center examined the photograph and compared it to Cole's description of his images from his 1968 interview. The photograph matched Cole's description of one of the shots he had taken showing tanks in a column with crews visible beside the vehicles. The center concluded that the photograph was likely one of Cole's images, though absolute confirmation was impossible without the original negative. The discovery raised the question of how this photograph had survived when German orders had explicitly stated that all copies were to be destroyed. The most likely explanation was that someone in German intelligence had kept a copy despite the destruction order, perhaps an intelligence officer who recognized the historical value of the image, or perhaps someone who wanted to preserve evidence of German decision-making during the battle. Whatever the reason, one of Cole's 11 photographs had survived. The photograph was donated to the National Archives in 2016. It is now part of the permanent collection of World War II photographs. The image shows exactly what Cole described. A column of Sherman tanks stretching back along a narrow forest road, crews standing beside their vehicles, snow on the ground. And visible in the photograph, if you know what to look for, are the tactical numbers painted on the tank turrets, numbers that identify the specific units these tanks belong to. Numbers that confirm this was the 3rd Armored Division, exactly as the German intelligence reports had stated. The photograph is a small image, maybe 8 by 10 inches, but it contains proof of what Cole documented. American armored strength. Overwhelming numbers. Material superiority that would eventually crush the German offensive in the Ardennes. Cole never knew that one of his photographs had survived. He died 27 years before it was discovered. But the photograph exists, and it proves that his work as a combat photographer had value beyond the immediate intelligence it might have provided. The photograph is historical evidence. It shows the reality of American material superiority during World War II. It shows why Germany lost the war. Not because of lack of courage or fighting skill, but because they were outnumbered and outproduced by an industrial power that could field 127 tanks in a single column in a sector where the Germans had 43 tanks total. The photograph that survived shows 18 Sherman tanks in clear detail. If you multiply that by the 7 miles of column that Cole described, you get approximately the 127 tanks that the German intelligence report mentioned. The photograph proves Cole's count was accurate, and it proves the German assessment was accurate. The Americans had overwhelming numerical superiority. The Battle of the Bulge was Germany's last major offensive of the war. It began on December 16, 1944. It ended on January 25, 1945. German forces achieved initial surprise and pushed deep into American lines. But they could not sustain the offensive. They ran out of fuel. They ran out of ammunition. And they faced American forces that had more tanks, more trucks, more supplies, more everything. The Germans knew they were outnumbered. But they didn't know by how much until Cole's photographs showed them the reality. And that reality was so devastating to morale that German High Command decided the photographs had to be destroyed. Better for German soldiers to die fighting without knowing they had no chance than to know the truth and lose the will to fight. Cole's story is about more than just photographs. It's about the power of images to shape perception and morale. It's about the decisions that get made in war, about what information can be shared and what must be suppressed. It's about a young photographer who did his job, documented what he saw, and then watched as his work was destroyed because it showed too much truth. And it's about the fact that even when images are destroyed, even when cameras are smashed and film is burned and orders are given to erase all evidence, sometimes one photograph survives. And that one photograph can tell the entire story. If you found this story as powerful as I did, hit that like button right now. Every like helps share these forgotten stories with more people who need to hear them. And subscribe to this channel because we are pulling these stories out of dusty archives every single day. Stories about the photographers and the soldiers, and the ordinary people who documented the truth even when that truth was dangerous. Drop a comment and tell me where you are watching from. United States, Germany, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia. Wherever you are part of keeping these memories alive. Tell me your location. Tell me if someone in your family served as a combat photographer or in the Signal Corps. Tell me what you think about the fact that Cole's photographs were destroyed because they showed American strength. Just let me know you are here and that you believe these stories matter. Thank you for watching, and thank you for helping make sure David Cole and his destroyed camera and his 11 photographs are not forgotten. These men and women documented the war so we could understand it, and they deserve to be remembered.